Right, so you wanted to deep dive into Cincinnato Administrators.
Yeah.
And, well, this book, this Cincinnato Administrators, Leadership in the Age of Ontosinclecticism,
Mm-hmm.
it really kind of takes us on a wild ride.
It does.
Like, imagine a world where leaders, they act less like politicians and more like, I don't know, ancient Roman farmers.
That's a really interesting way to put it.
It is kind of a strange concept.
It is fascinating.
Yeah.
The book draws inspiration from Cincinnatus.
Right.
He's this legendary Roman figure who embodies selfless service, something we don't often see in today's world.
Not so much, yeah.
Not when power is involved.
No, everybody wants to hold on to it.
Right, exactly.
So he was asked to be dictator like twice.
Yes!
During times of crisis, and both times he's like,
yeah,
okay, Rome is saved, back to the farm.
Exactly. He just went back to plowing his fields.
Yeah, it's wild.
And the book argues that his example holds the key to a new type of leadership. And they use that as a foundation for their whole model of governance.
Okay, and it's all based on this idea of ontosinclecticism.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty complicated.
It does. It's a mouthful.
But the book basically says it's about, like, taking ideas that seem contradictory from different schools of thought and kind of weaving them together to find innovative solutions.
That's a great explanation.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Okay, good.
It's just like, instead of getting stuck in one way of thinking,
Right.
ontosinclecticism allows leaders to be more adaptable and creative.
Okay.
They can pull from different philosophies and approaches
to
find what actually works in a given situation.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
So these ontosinclecticists,
Yeah.
how do they actually lead?
Okay, so picture this. A global fraternity of leaders. They're called, as you know, the Cincinnato Administrators.
Right.
And they collaborate across borders. They share knowledge without the usual competition or rivalry.
Wow, that's already so different
Isn't it?
than how most leaders operate today.
Huge difference.
Yep.
So no more hoarding information, no more trying to one-up each other.
It's like a total shift in mindset.
It is.
Yeah.
And when their term is up, a Cincinnato administrator steps down
Okay.
and becomes a mentor,
Oh, interesting.
guiding the next generation.
Okay.
So it's all about circulating fresh perspectives.
Right. Yeah.
Making sure power doesn't get stuck in the hands of a few.
So it's like a constant cycle of learning and leadership.
It is, yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool.
And it doesn't stop there.
Oh.
They're also encouraged to do something called conscious tourism.
Conscious tourism.
Yeah.
What is that? Like eco-friendly travel?
Well, it's more about immersing themselves in different cultures
Okay.
to gain leadership insights.
Yeah.
It's going beyond the typical tourist experience.
Right. Yeah.
It's about understanding different perspectives, bringing back valuable knowledge that they can apply to their own leadership.
So it's not just a vacation, it's like professional development.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
But how do we know if a Cincinnato administrator is actually doing a good job? Are we talking elections, approval ratings, like what?
That's a good question. And the book uses something called conscious performance indicators
Okay.
to measure their effectiveness.
Okay.
So these go beyond typical metrics like GDP
Right.
and focus on things that actually reflect a society's well-being.
Okay.
So we're talking about happiness levels, innovation, crime reduction,
Is like that?
things like that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm starting to see the picture a little bit.
Yeah.
But can you give me a concrete example? Like, how would this actually work in the real world?
Sure. So the book brings it to life with these really fascinating fictional stories.
Okay.
So take Maximiliano Ruiz, who they call the crime crusher.
Okay. The crime crusher.
Yeah. He took on a city riddled with crime
Okay.
and used a combination of cutting-edge technology, like intelligent surveillance, community programs.
So he wasn't just being tough on crime. He was trying to understand and fix the problem.
Exactly. And the result was a 70% drop in crime.
Whoa, 70%.
70%.
That's amazing.
Yeah. He brought together these seemingly opposite approaches to create real, lasting change.
Wow, I'm starting to see the potential here.
Yeah.
What about other examples?
Oh, yeah, there are plenty.
Okay.
There's Isabella Mendieta, the public sector innovator.
The public sector innovator, okay.
She tackled a bloated and corrupt bureaucracy.
Ooh, I bet that was fun.
Probably not.
No.
But she introduced these performance-based metrics and competition, just like in the private sector.
Interesting.
And public sector efficiency just soared.
Really?
75% improvement.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I bet she had a lot of people pushing back on her, though.
Probably a lot of resistance to change.
Yeah.
And then there's Tiago Naranjo, the visionary educator.
Visionary educator.
He completely revamped an outdated education system. Oh, wow.
To focus on multidisciplinary learning
Okay.
and hands-on innovation.
So it's not just rote memorization and standardized tests anymore.
No, not at all.
Okay.
And get this, the city saw a 40% jump in patents and new startups after he implemented his changes.
Okay, I see what you mean about these indicators
Yeah.
reflecting the well-being of a society.
Right.
These are impressive results.
Yeah, they are.
So these stories show how individuals can make a difference, but how does the book imagine this working on a larger scale?
That's a great question.
Would it be like
Yeah.
a global network of cities all run by Cincinnato administrators?
It's an interesting idea, and in a way, yes.
Okay.
The book often compares the Cincinnato model to an orchestra.
Oh, okay.
You know, the leaders like the conductor,
Right.
bringing all the different sections together,
Yeah.
economics, education, culture, into harmony.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that require an insane amount of coordination?
How do you get all these different areas and even different countries on the same page?
Well, the book talks about strategic synchronization, where this global fraternity of leaders would work together, share knowledge and resources across continents.
Right.
They even propose intelligent design principles for cities.
Intelligent design, what is that?
Yeah, it's about maximizing human potential. They envision self-sufficient, auto-sustainable superblocks.
Sustainable superblocks.
Yeah.
What are those?
So they combine residential, commercial, and cultural functions all in one.
Oh, wow. So they're like little mini cities within a city.
Exactly, like self-sustaining ecosystems.
Okay. That's a pretty wild concept.
It is.
So if Cincinnato administrators aren't about traditional top-down authority,
Right.
how do they actually influence people?
That's a good question.
Is it all just charisma and persuasion?
It's more about leading by example.
Hmm.
The book calls it resonance with purpose and integrity.
Resonance with purpose and integrity.
Yeah. So instead of commanding or controlling,
Right.
they inspire others to follow their lead.
So they're not just talking about these values.
No,
They're embodying them.
exactly.
Like your actions become a kind of magnetic force.
Absolutely. The book emphasizes conscious power.
Conscious power.
Okay. This ability to orchestrate human potential through inspiration and shared purpose rather than coercion.
Okay, that's a pretty powerful concept.
It is.
But do they just rely on speeches and setting a good example?
Well, they also harness the power of cultural narratives and storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah, they envision Cincinnato administrators as master storytellers.
Interesting.
You know, using narratives to promote unity, inspire innovation, and encourage conscious living.
Oh, okay. So it's like they're
Yeah.
curating a positive cultural script to inspire and guide people.
That's a great way to put it.
Instead of dry policy papers
Yes.
and political rhetoric,
Exactly.
they're weaving these compelling stories that people can actually connect with.
Yeah, that's the idea.
That's a pretty clever strategy.
It is, and mentorship is a huge part of it, too.
Oh, right, right.
You know, the more experienced Cincinnato administrators would guide the younger ones, pass down wisdom,
Right, yeah.
ensure that this new model of leadership keeps going.
So it's like this self-sustaining system where knowledge and experience are constantly being passed down.
That's the goal.
But what about learning from other cultures?
Well, it's another key piece.
How do these globe-trotting administrators avoid just imposing their own ideas?
Right, that's a really important point, and that's where cultural cross-pollination comes in.
Cultural cross-pollination.
Okay, they're encouraged to actively engage with other cultures, to truly immerse themselves, learn from different traditions.
So it's not about going in with a my way or the highway attitude.
No, not at all.
It's about being open to different perspectives.
Right.
And finding, universal truths that can be applied across cultures. I like that. Yeah. And the book argues that this kind of exploration actually fosters a healthy form of patriotism. Wait, patriotism?
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about a global brotherhood here.
We are.
Those seem kind of contradictory.
Well, they call it positive patriotism.
Positive patriotism.
Yeah, it's a love for one's culture, but rooted in respect for diversity.
Okay.
So the idea is that by experiencing the richness of other cultures, you actually gain a deeper appreciation for your own.
So it's like saying that you can't fully appreciate your own family
Exactly.
until you've met other families and seen the world through their eyes.
Precisely. It's about expanding your horizons.
Yeah, yeah.
Realizing we're all part of the same human family.
Okay, I could see that.
While still valuing our unique cultural heritage.
This Cincinnato model is really making me rethink things.
Yeah.
About leadership, about culture, even patriotism.
It's a thought-provoking model, for sure.
Yeah, but I'm still a little fuzzy on this super culture concept. Can you break that down for me a little more?
Sure. Imagine a cultural paradigm that blends global values with local traditions.
Okay.
It's about finding those universal principles that unite humanity,
Yeah.
while also celebrating the beautiful tapestry of diverse cultures.
So instead of a melting pot, where everyone's expected to assimilate,
Yeah.
it's more like a mosaic
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
where each piece retains its individuality
Yes.
while contributing to a larger, more beautiful whole.
Exactly. And the book argues that this kind of cultural harmony is essential for a truly thriving global civilization.
Okay, I'm starting to see the big picture.
Yeah.
But how do they actually plan to put all of this into practice? Is it all just theoretical?
Well, the book gets into specifics.
Okay.
They envision conscious towns.
Conscious towns. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me more. I want to hear all about this.
So they're designed from the ground up
Okay.
to embody these principles. They'd be run on a system called the System of Administration of Autonomous Neighborhoods.
System of Administration of Autonomous Neighborhoods. Okay.
It's basically hyper-local governance.
Hyperlocal government. Okay.
Where communities have way more control over their own destinies.
So it's about empowering people at the grassroots level.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, and economically, they'd operate on a system called the Conscious Scientific Economic System.
Oh, okay. What's that?
It's called CSES, for short.
CSES, got it.
It's about ethical wealth creation, fair competition, ensuring that everyone benefits from prosperity.
So it's not about cutthroat capitalism or the accumulation of wealth just for its own sake.
Not at all.
It's about using economics as a tool to create a more just and equitable society.
Exactly. And the book also gets into the physical layout of these towns.
Oh, wait.
Remember those self-sufficient superblocks we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, they'd be a key feature of these conscious towns, creating integrated spaces where people could live, work, learn, and play all within walking distance.
Wow. It sounds like a totally different way of life.
It is, yeah.
So are they suggesting that these conscious towns would be like blueprints for the future?
Yeah.
Like little pockets of conscious evolution that could eventually spread and transform the whole world?
That's the hope, that they could ripple outward.
It's a beautiful metaphor.
It is.
But let's zoom back in on the individual Cincinnato administrators for a minute.
Okay.
We've talked about how they lead by example and inspire through resonance, but what are some of the specific strategies they use to bring about change?
Well, one unconventional but really powerful tool they emphasize is storytelling.
Storytelling, okay.
Think about how narratives shape our understanding of the world, inspire us to act.
I love a good story.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, but how exactly would they use storytelling as a leadership tool?
Right.
Would it be like giving inspiring speeches or writing books?
It could be that.
Okay.
But it's more about weaving narratives into everything they do.
Okay.
Using them to promote unity, inspire innovation, encourage conscious living.
So it's less about giving orders or issuing decrees.
Right.
And more about tapping into the power of story to change hearts and minds.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
It is. And another crucial element is mentorship.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The older, more experienced Cincinnato administrators would guide the younger ones,
right,
ensuring the continuity of this new model of leadership.
It's not just about transferring information, though, right?
No, it's about cultivating a certain mindset, an ethos.
Ethos, yeah.
They're nurturing a whole new breed of leader.
That's fascinating.
It is.
Okay, now I want to circle back to this idea of cultural cross-pollination.
Okay.
How would they make sure that their learning from other cultures is respectful?
Yeah.
And not just like a form of cultural appropriation?
That's a great question. And the book stresses that it's not about imposing a one-size-fits-all model or just copying what others are doing.
Right.
It's about approaching other cultures with humility and a genuine desire to learn.
So being a student,
yes,
not a conqueror.
Exactly.
Okay.
They're encouraged to immerse themselves in different traditions, ways of thinking, and through that process of engagement and exchange, they can identify universal truths, best practices, adapt them to different contexts.
So it's a delicate balancing act.
Is.
Finding those common threads that unite us, but still respecting and valuing our differences.
Exactly.
Okay, but how does this lead to the positive patriotism they talk about? Isn't that kind of an oxymoron?
Well, the idea is that by experiencing the richness and diversity of other cultures, you gain a greater appreciation for your own.
So it's like saying that you can't truly love your own family until you've met other families and seen the world through their eyes.
Exactly. It's about expanding your horizons, challenging your assumptions.
Right.
Realizing that we're all interconnected, even in our differences.
That's a really beautiful way to think about patriotism.
It is.
Okay, now I'm ready to tackle this superculture concept again.
Okay.
It's such a big idea. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what it would actually look like in practice.
Okay, well, remember those conscious towns we were talking about?
Yeah.
They're seen as crucial incubators for this superculture.
Because they're designed to be microcosms of diversity and harmony.
Exactly.
Like little test labs for new ways of living together.
Precisely. And they wouldn't be isolated experiments.
Okay.
The book envisions them as interconnected, sharing knowledge and best practices.
So you'd have this network of conscious towns.
Yeah.
Each with its own unique character, cultural blend, but all working towards this common goal of creating a more conscious and harmonious world.
Exactly, like a global tapestry, being woven together thread by thread, town by town.
It's beautiful.
It is.
But how do you get from individual towns to a global superculture?
That's where the Cincinnato Administrators come in.
Okay.
They'd be the facilitators, the networkers, the storytellers, constantly working to connect people and ideas across borders.
So it's not just about physical spaces.
No.
It's about fostering a shared set of values, a global ethic that transcends cultural differences.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our shared humanity, embracing a more holistic worldview.
And they believe this superculture is crucial for solving, like, the big problems facing humanity.
Yeah, the complex challenges.
Because when we're divided, we're less able to cooperate, find solutions.
Exactly. And I think we can all see how true that is in the world today.
Yeah, definitely.
But, you know, for all this talk of superculture, global transformation, I'm wondering how this new model of leadership would actually play out in the real world.
Right. It's easy to get swept up in the big ideas.
It is.
But how would these Cincinnato administrators actually wield power?
Yeah.
Would they be elected? Have armies? What tools would they use to influence people?
Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because the whole model rejects those traditional power structures in favor of a more decentralized approach.
So no more presidents or dictators calling all the shots?
Not quite. There would still be leaders, but their roles would be very different. Instead of issuing commands or controlling resources, they'd be facilitators, orchestrators, and most importantly, inspirers.
So more like coaches or mentors than commanders.
Exactly. Their power comes from their ability to inspire and guide others, not from their position or authority.
Okay, so it's a totally different way of thinking about power.
It is.
Than what we're used to.
Yep. And their main tool of influence would be their resonance with purpose and integrity.
Resonance with purpose and integrity, right.
Yeah, remember they lead by example, embodying the values they preach.
So it's not enough to just talk about these values.
Right.
They have to walk the walk.
They have to live it.
Yeah.
Their success wouldn't be measured by wealth or territory,
Okay.
but by how effectively they orchestrate human potential, contribute to the well-being of their communities.
That's such a different way of thinking about leadership.
It is.
But how would this actually work on a day-to-day basis? Would it just be endless meetings and brainstorming sessions?
Well, there would be a lot of collaboration and dialogue.
Okay.
Imagine Cincinnato administrators from all over the world meeting regularly, both virtually and in person. Share knowledge, strategize, coordinate their efforts.
Like a global brain trust.
Yeah.
Constantly exchanging ideas and experiences.
Exactly. And those meetings wouldn't be limited to just administrators.
Oh, okay. They'd involve experts from all different fields.
Okay.
Scientists, artists, educators, entrepreneurs.
Wow.
Most importantly, everyday citizens.
So a truly multidisciplinary and participatory approach.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, but they wouldn't just be talking.
No.
They'd be taking action too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Launching pilot projects, experimenting with new policies.
Okay.
constantly adapting their approach based on feedback and data.
So a very iterative, agile way of governing.
Exactly.
Constantly
learning and evolving.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about embracing change, being willing to experiment, learning from both successes and failures.
Yeah.
Most importantly, putting people at the center of every decision, making sure that those decisions are truly serving human needs and well-being.
That all sounds really promising.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic. This Cincinnato model seems pretty radical.
It is a big shift.
Do you really think it's achievable?
It's a big question. I mean, wouldn't there be massive resistance from people who benefit from the current system?
The book definitely acknowledges those challenges.
Okay.
It's not going to happen overnight.
No.
It requires a pretty significant shift in consciousness.
Yeah, but they think it's possible.
They do, and they suggest that we're at a unique point in history.
In what way?
Well, with technology rapidly connecting us across borders and a growing awareness of our global interdependence, the conditions are ripe for a move toward a more conscious and harmonious way of living.
So it's not just about some far-off utopia.
No.
It's about recognizing the potential for change that already exists.
Yeah.
Nurturing it.
Exactly. And the book argues that the Cincinnato model can provide a roadmap.
A roadmap.
Okay. But before we get too carried away, imagining a world run by these idealistic leaders, let's circle back to ontosinclecticism.
Okay.
We talked about it conceptually, but I'd love to understand how it actually informs their approach to leadership.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the practical details.
Yeah, it is.
And forget about the underlying philosophy.
The philosophy that drives it all.
Right. So remind me,
okay,
what is ontosinclecticism again?
So ontosinclecticism is all about blending those seemingly contradictory ideas to create innovative solutions.
So instead of getting bogged down in dogma or ideology, you're constantly looking for new and creative ways to solve problems.
Exactly. And that's reflected in so many aspects of the Cincinnato model.
Okay.
For example, they emphasize balancing ambition with humility, power with purpose, individual achievement with collective well-being.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between these seemingly opposite forces.
Exactly. And it's about being comfortable with ambiguity and paradox.
Okay.
Recognizing that the world is complex.
Yeah.
There rarely are simple answers.
That's a refreshing perspective.
It is.
Seems like our current political climate is all about black and white thinking.
Absolutely.
With no room for nuance or compromise.
It's very polarized.
Yeah.
Ontosinclecticism also stresses the importance of continuous learning and adaptation.
Okay.
The world's constantly changing.
Right.
We need to be flexible and open-minded.
Yeah. So it's about being a lifelong learner. Recognizing that there's always more to discover.
Exactly.
And that ties in perfectly with this idea of cultural cross-pollination.
Absolutely. It's about being open to different perspectives. Recognizing that we can learn from each other, no matter how different our backgrounds or beliefs may be.
Okay, all this talk of ontosinclecticism and the Cincinnato model, it's really making me think. I'm curious, what do you think it would actually be like to live in a world governed by these principles?
That's a great question, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot as we've been talking.
Yeah, me too.
Imagine a world where leadership is based on service and integrity, where communities have more control over their own destinies, where the economy prioritizes sustainability and well-being.
It's a pretty radical vision.
It is.
But it's also incredibly compelling.
It is.
Do you think there are any real-world examples that even remotely resemble this model?
Well, there are definitely pockets of innovation and experimentation happening all over the world.
Like what?
Well, you see cities experimenting with participatory budgeting, businesses embracing social responsibility, communities coming together to address local challenges in really creative ways.
So even if the full-blown Cincinnato model doesn't materialize overnight, there are glimmers of hope. There are signs that people are hungry for a different way of doing things.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes this book so exciting.
Okay.
It's not just a theoretical exercise, it's a call to action.
A call to action.
It's a reminder that we have the power to shape the future.
Yeah.
Even small acts. So welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Cincinnato Administrators.
Okay, so we've laid out like the big picture.
Yeah.
A global like brotherhood of leaders. Guided by ontosinclecticism.
Right.
working together to create a more, like, conscious world.
Yeah, it's a big vision.
It is a big vision.
It was exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah.
But how does all of this translate to, like, the actual experience of living in such a society?
That's the question, isn't it?
You mentioned conscious towns earlier.
I did.
And they sound fascinating.
They are a fascinating concept.
What exactly makes them different from regular cities?
Well, the book describes them as ecosystems designed for functional living that maximize human potential and minimize environmental impact.
So it's not just about having, like, shiny buildings and the latest tech.
Not just about that.
It's about how those things actually serve people.
Exactly. It's about how those things serve people's needs and well-being.
Right, okay.
And a big part of that is this idea of the system of administration of autonomous neighborhoods.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is. What does that even mean?
It's basically hyper-local governance.
Okay.
Where decisions are made by the people directly affected by them.
That's so different.
It is.
From the bureaucratic nightmares we often associate with, like, city governments.
Right. It's a completely different approach.
Does this mean, like, more direct democracy, like town hall meetings?
Yeah.
Community votes?
That's the idea, empowering communities to shape their own destinies.
Okay.
Rather than having decisions imposed from the top down.
Interesting.
And then there's the economic side of things.
Right.
The conscious scientific economic system, or CSES.
Yeah, we touched on that briefly, but I'm still a little unclear on how it would actually work.
Okay.
I mean, how do you balance competition and collaboration in a way that benefits everyone?
That's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
So the book emphasizes ethical wealth creation.
Okay.
Fair competition.
It's about moving away from a purely profit-driven model.
Okay.
And towards a system that prioritizes sustainability and social responsibility.
So no more cutthroat capitalism.
Ideally not.
Or giant corporations exploiting people and the planet.
That's the hope, yeah.
Okay.
The CSES is all about creating a more humane, sustainable approach.
Yeah.
Where everyone has the opportunity to benefit from prosperity.
It sounds like a pretty radical departure.
It is.
From the way most economies operate today.
Definitely.
Can you give me an example?
Sure.
Of what this beautiful money concept would actually look like?
Okay, so imagine a business that prioritizes fair wages.
Okay.
Environmentally friendly practices, giving back to the community.
Yeah.
Even if it means slightly lower profits.
So they're not just chasing the bottom line?
No, they're thinking about the bigger picture.
Okay.
They're contributing to a more conscious and ethical way of doing business.
I can see how that would be a game changer.
It would be.
It's not just about making money. It's about making money in a way that aligns with your values.
Exactly.
And benefits society as a whole.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really inspiring. But let's talk more about the layout of these conscious towns.
Okay.
What would it be like to actually live in one of these places?
Okay, picture this. You wake up in your apartment, which is part of a self-sufficient superblock.
Right.
You walk downstairs to a local cafe for breakfast.
Yep.
Head to your co-working space. All your daily needs, grocery stores, healthcare clinics, parks, schools.
Yeah.
All within walking distance.
So you wouldn't even need a car?
Not necessarily, no.
That would be amazing for the environment.
It would.
And imagine evenings filled with community events.
Yeah.
Cultural performances. Opportunities to connect with your neighbors.
Exactly. Building a strong sense of community.
It sounds idyllic.
It does.
Like a small town vibe. But with all the amenities and cultural richness of a big city.
The best of both worlds.
Yeah, but how do these conscious towns fit into the bigger picture of this global network of Cincinnato Administrators?
Yeah.
Are they meant to be like isolated utopias?
No, not at all.
Or are they somehow connected?
They're definitely not meant to be isolated bubbles.
Okay.
The book envisions them as interconnected nodes in a global network, sharing knowledge and best practices.
So they're like seeds of a new way of life.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
That could eventually spread.
Spread and transform the world.
That's a beautiful metaphor.
It is.
Okay, but let's zoom back in on the individual Cincinnato administrators.
Okay.
We've talked about how they lead by example.
Yeah.
Inspire through resonance. But what are some of the specific strategies they use to bring about change?
Well, one really unconventional but powerful tool that they emphasize is storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah. Think about how narratives shape our understanding of the world.
Okay, yeah.
Inspire us to act.
Right? A good story can really move you.
It can.
But how would they use storytelling as a leadership tool?
It's a good question.
Would it be like giving inspiring speeches?
It could be.
Writing books?
It could be that too.
Yeah.
But it's more about weaving narratives into everything they do. Using them to promote unity, inspire innovation, encourage conscious living.
So it's less about giving orders or issuing decrees and more about tapping into the power of story to change hearts and minds.
That's the idea.
That's really interesting.
It is a powerful tool.
Yeah.
Another crucial element is mentorship.
Oh, right, yeah.
The older, more experienced Cincinnato administrators guiding the younger ones, ensuring that this new model of leadership continues.
It's not just about transferring information, though, is it?
No, it's about cultivating a certain mindset, an ethos.
An ethos, right?
It's about nurturing a whole new breed of leader.
That's fascinating.
And ensuring that this new way of thinking continues to evolve and thrive.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go back to cultural cross-pollination.
Right.
How would they make sure that their learning from other cultures is respectful?
Yeah.
Not just a form of cultural appropriation.
It's a great question, and the book really stresses that it's not about imposing their own ideas or copying what others are doing.
Right.
It's about approaching other cultures with humility.
Okay.
Genuine desire to learn.
So being a student.
Yes.
Not a conqueror.
Exactly.
I like that.
And they're encouraged to immerse themselves in different traditions and ways of thinking.
Okay.
And through that process of engagement and exchange, they can identify universal truths and best practices that can be adapted to different contexts.
So it's like finding those common threads that unite us while still respecting and valuing our differences.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
It is, but how does this lead to positive patriotism? Isn't that a bit of an oxymoron?
Well, the idea is that by experiencing the richness and diversity of other cultures, you gain a greater appreciation for your own.
So it's like saying that you can't truly love your own family until you've met other families.
Right.
Seeing the world through their eyes.
Exactly. It's about expanding your horizons, challenging your assumptions, realizing we're all interconnected, even in our differences.
That's a really beautiful way to think about patriotism.
It is. It's about expanding your understanding of what it means to belong.
Okay, now I think I'm ready to tackle this superculture concept again.
Okay.
It's such a big idea.
It is a big idea.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around what it would actually look like in practice.
Okay, well, remember those conscious towns we were talking about?
Yes.
They're seen as crucial incubators for the superculture.
Because they're designed to be.
Yeah.
Like microcosms of diversity and harmony. Like little test labs for new ways of living together.
Precisely. And they wouldn't be isolated experiments. The book envisions them as interconnected, sharing knowledge, sharing best practices.
So you'd have this network of conscious towns, each with its own like unique character, cultural blend, but all working towards this common goal.
Exactly.
With creating a more conscious, harmonious world.
It's like a global tapestry being woven together, thread by thread, town by town.
I love that.
Yeah.
But how do you get from individual towns to a global superculture?
That's where the Cincinnato administrators come in.
Okay.
They'd be the facilitators, the networkers, the storytellers.
Right.
Constantly working to connect people and ideas across borders.
So it's not just about physical spaces.
No, it's about more than that.
It's about fostering like a shared set of values, a global ethic that transcends cultural differences.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our shared humanity, embracing a more holistic worldview.
They believe this superculture is crucial for solving the complex challenges
it is
facing humanity.
Yeah, the book argues that without that kind of unity, it's going to be very difficult to address those challenges effectively.
Because when we're divided, we're less able to cooperate and find solutions.
Exactly. And I think we can all see how true that is in the world today.
Yeah, definitely.
But for all this talk of superculture and global transformation, I'm wondering how this new model of leadership would actually play out in the real world.
Right. It's easy to get swept up in the big ideas.
It is.
But how would these Cincinnato administrators actually wield power?
Yeah.
Would they be elected? Have armies? What tools would they use to influence people?
Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because the whole model rejects those traditional power structures in favor of a more decentralized approach.
So no more presidents or dictators calling all the shots.
Not quite. There would still be leaders, but their roles would be very different.
In what way?
Well, instead of issuing commands or controlling resources, they'd be facilitators, orchestrators, and, most importantly, inspirers.
So more like coaches or mentors than commanders.
Exactly. Their power comes from their ability to inspire and guide others.
Not from their position or authority.
Exactly. It's a completely different way of thinking about power.
It is.
And their main tool of influence would be their resonance with purpose and integrity.
Resonance with purpose and integrity.
Yeah, remember, they lead by example, embodying the values they preach.
So it's not enough to just talk about these values.
No.
They have to walk the walk.
They have to live it.
Okay.
Their success wouldn't be measured by wealth or territory, but by how effectively they orchestrate human potential, contribute to the well-being of their communities.
That's such a different way of thinking about power and leadership.
It is a shift, isn't it?
Than what we're used to. But how would this actually work on a day-to-day basis? Would it just be endless meetings and brainstorming sessions?
Well, there would be a lot of collaboration and dialogue, for sure. Imagine Cincinnato administrators from all over the world meeting regularly, both virtually and in person, sharing knowledge, strategizing, coordinating their efforts.
Like a global brain trust.
Exactly. Constantly exchanging ideas and experiences.
Okay, but they wouldn't just be talking, right?
No, not just talking.
They'd be taking action, too.
Absolutely. They'd be launching pilot projects, experimenting with new policies, constantly adapting their approach based on feedback and data.
So a very iterative, agile way of governing.
Exactly. Constantly learning and evolving. It's about embracing change, being willing to experiment, and learning from both successes and failures.
Okay, so always trying new things.
Always learning.
And putting people at the center of every decision.
Making sure that those decisions are truly serving human needs and well-being.
That all sounds really promising.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic. This Cincinnato model seems pretty radical.
It is a big shift.
Do you really think it's achievable?
That's the question.
Wouldn't there be massive resistance from people who benefit from the current system?
The book definitely acknowledges the challenges. It's not going to happen overnight.
No.
It would require a pretty significant shift in consciousness.
Right, but they think it's possible.
They do. They do.
I do.
And they suggest that we're at a unique point in history.
In what way?
Well, with technology rapidly connecting us across borders and a growing awareness of our global interdependence, the conditions are ripe for a move toward a more conscious and harmonious way of living.
So it's not just about some far-off utopia. It's about recognizing the potential for change.
Yes.
That already exists.
Exactly.
Nurturing it.
And the book argues that the Cincinnato model can provide a roadmap for that change.
A roadmap. Okay, I like that.
But before we get too carried away,
Imagining a world run by these idealistic leaders.
Right.
Let's circle back to Ontosinclecticism.
Right.
We talked about it conceptually, but I'd love to understand how it actually informs the Cincinnato Administrators' approach to leadership.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the practical details.
It is. You get lost in the weeds sometimes.
And forget about the underlying philosophy that drives it all.
Right. The big picture.
Right. So remind me.
Okay.
What is Ontosinclecticism again?
Ontosinclecticism is all about blending those seemingly contradictory ideas to create innovative solutions.
So instead of getting bogged down in dogma or ideology,
rigid thinking,
you're constantly looking for new and creative ways to solve problems.
Exactly. You're staying flexible. And that's reflected in so many aspects of the Cincinnato model.
Like what?
Well, for example, they emphasize balancing ambition with humility, power with purpose, individual achievement with collective well-being.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between these seemingly opposite forces.
Exactly. And it's about being comfortable with ambiguity and paradox.
Okay.
Recognizing that the world is complex.
Yeah.
There rarely are simple answers.
That's a refreshing perspective.
It is.
It seems like our current political climate is all about black and white thinking.
It does.
No room for nuance or compromise.
It's very polarized, yeah.
Yeah.
Ontosinclecticism also stresses the importance of continuous learning and adaptation.
Okay.
The world is constantly changing.
Right.
And we need to be flexible and open-minded.
Yeah. So it's about being a lifelong learner. Recognizing that there's always more to discover.
Always more to learn, exactly.
And that ties in perfectly with the idea of cultural cross-pollination, right?
Absolutely. It's about being open to different perspectives.
Yeah.
Recognizing that we can learn from each other no matter how different our backgrounds or beliefs may be.
Okay, all this talk of ontosinclecticism and the Cincinnato model, it's really making me think.
Good, that's the goal.
I'm curious, what do you think it would actually be like to live in a world governed by these principles?
That's a great question, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot as we've been talking.
Yeah, me too.
Imagine a world where leadership is based on service and integrity.
Okay.
Where communities have more control over their own destinies.
Right.
Where the economy prioritizes sustainability and well-being.
It's a pretty radical vision.
It is a radical vision.
But it's also incredibly compelling.
It is.
Do you think there are any real-world examples that even remotely resemble this model?
Well, there are definitely pockets of innovation and experimentation happening all over the world.
Like what?
You see cities experimenting with participatory budgeting.
Okay.
Businesses embracing social responsibility. Communities coming together to address local challenges in creative ways.
So even if the full-blown Cincinnato model doesn't materialize overnight, there are glimmers of hope. Signs that people are hungry for a different way of doing things?
Absolutely, and I think that's what makes this book so exciting.
Okay.
It's not just a theoretical exercise. It's a call to action.
A call to action.
It's a reminder that we have the power to shape the future.
Right.
And that even small acts of conscious choice can make a difference.
Small acts of conscious choice can make a difference.
Yes.
So we've been exploring this fascinating concept of Cincinnato Administrators. It's a pretty radical vision for a more, conscious and harmonious world.
Definitely.
But as with any system, there are bound to be potential downsides and challenges.
Right. No system is perfect.
What are some of the things that could go wrong?
That's a really important question. And the book does acknowledge some potential pitfalls.
Okay.
One that comes to mind is the issue of representation. How do you make sure Cincinnato administrators actually reflect the diversity of their communities?
Because if it ends up being a bunch of elites from similar backgrounds making decisions for everyone.
That's not going to work.
That's not exactly a recipe for a thriving and equitable society.
Not at all. That's why the book stresses the importance of inclusive selection processes.
Okay.
Making sure there's representation from different social classes, ethnicities, genders, and so on.
But even with the best intentions, wouldn't there still be a risk of bias creeping in?
Of course, it's a valid concern.
Who gets to decide who's qualified and who isn't?
Right, and that's where transparency and accountability come in.
Okay.
Remember those conscious performance indicators we talked about?
Yeah, the metrics that measure their impact on things like happiness and innovation.
Exactly. Those indicators would need to be carefully designed to reflect the values of the community.
Right.
Guard against those unintended consequences.
Right. Yeah, it's not just about measuring the right things.
No.
It's about making sure those measurements are fair.
Exactly.
Unbiased.
So there needs to be a system of checks and balances in place.
Okay.
Make sure that power isn't being abused or concentrated in the hands of a few.
What about the risk of groupthink?
That's another potential pitfall.
Yeah, if you have like a close-knit group of leaders who all share a similar worldview, wouldn't they be prone to missing crucial blind spots?
It's definitely a possibility, and it's something the book addresses by emphasizing a culture of dissent and constructive criticism.
Okay, so creating a space where people feel comfortable speaking up,
exactly,
voicing different opinions, even if they go against the grain.
Even if it's uncomfortable. It's about encouraging that healthy debate.
And that goes beyond just the administrators themselves, right?
It does.
It needs to be like a core value of the entire community.
It's all society.
Remember that concept of hyper-local governance?
Yes.
Where communities have more control over their own decision-making?
Exactly. The system of administration of autonomous neighborhoods.
Right.
Well, that system needs to be designed in a way that ensures diverse voices are heard.
Okay.
Decisions are made through a truly participatory process.
So it's not just about having the right people at the top.
No.
It's about creating a culture of inclusivity.
Yes.
And open dialogue.
Open dialogue at every level.
Okay, we've talked about diversity, groupthink.
Yeah.
Importance of transparency and accountability. Are there any other potential pitfalls we haven't considered?
Well, there's always the risk of complacency, even with the best systems in place. If people get too comfortable, lose sight of their purpose,
things can start to slip.
Right, people get lazy.
Yeah, it's human nature.
Yeah, so how do you prevent that from happening?
That's the challenge, right? The book emphasizes continuous learning and adaptation as key antidotes to complacency. Remember that concept of conscious tourism, where administrators immerse themselves in other cultures?
Right, to gain new perspectives.
Exactly.
Avoid getting stuck in their own bubble.
That needs to be an ongoing practice, not a one-time thing.
Okay, so always learning, always growing.
Always evolving.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be limited to administrators. The whole community should be encouraged to engage in cultural exchange, cross-pollination, stay curious, challenge assumptions, constantly seek new ways to grow and evolve.
So it's about recognizing that no system is perfect.
Exact.
And that we need to be constantly vigilant and adaptable to ensure that it's serving its intended purpose.
Yeah, it's about staying engaged. But let's be honest, this whole Cincinnato model sounds pretty utopian.
It does sound idealistic.
Does any of this really have any practical relevance in the world today?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's one I've been pondering throughout this whole deep dive.
Yeah, me too.
On the surface, it does seem pretty far removed from the realities of modern politics.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine our current crop of politicians willingly stepping down from power.
I know, it's a hard one to picture.
To become mentors.
Yeah. Not exactly a common occurrence these days.
Not so much, no.
But even if we don't adopt the Cincinnato model wholesale, I think there are some valuable lessons we can draw from it. For one thing, it challenges us to rethink our assumptions about leadership. Do we really need leaders who are obsessed with power and control? Or can we envision leaders who are more like facilitators, collaborators, inspirers?
It's definitely a provocative question.
It is.
Makes me wonder about those conscious performance indicators.
Yeah.
What if we started holding our leaders accountable for things like well-being, sustainability, cultural harmony, instead of just focusing on economic growth?
It would be a huge shift, but a positive one.
And it ties into that idea of beautiful money.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to reevaluate our whole approach to economics. Move away from this purely profit-driven model towards a more conscious and ethical system.
Yeah, a system that prioritizes people and the planet.
Yeah.
Instead of just profits.
It's a tall order, but I think more and more people are starting to realize
I think so too.
That the current system isn't sustainable.
Yeah, not in the long run.
And even if we can't create fully self-sufficient conscious towns overnight.
Right, it's a process.
We can still draw inspiration from their design principles.
We can.
Remember those auto-sustainable superblocks?
I do. They were amazing.
With their focus on sustainability, community integration, human-centered design.
Yeah, they were really innovative.
We might not be able to replicate them exactly.
True.
But we can start incorporating those principles into our urban planning.
We can create more walkable neighborhoods. Prioritize green spaces. Design buildings that are both beautiful and functional.
So it's about taking those big, inspiring ideas. Finding ways to apply them in our own context.
Exactly.
Even if it's on a smaller scale.
Start small, think big.
Who knows? Maybe those small-scale changes can eventually lead to bigger systemic shifts.
I think that's the hope.
It's a hopeful thought, but I have to admit, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the challenges we face.
It is. It can feel daunting.
It can be hard to stay optimistic when you look at all the problems in the world.
I understand that feeling. It's easy to get discouraged.
Yeah.
But remember, the Cincinnato model emphasizes the power of individual action.
Okay.
We don't have to wait for someone else to fix things. We can start making a difference right now in our own communities with the choices we make every day.
So it's not about waiting for some grand revolution.
No.
It's about focusing on what we can control.
Exactly.
Doing what we can where we are right now.
Every act of kindness, compassion, conscious choice, it has a ripple effect.
The ripple effect.
And those ripples can spread further than we might imagine.
It's an empowering thought.
It is.
Reminds me of that quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world."
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's about embodying the values we want to see in the world around us.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe those individual ripples of change will eventually come together, create a powerful wave.
Right.
Transforms the world.
Well, that's an incredibly inspiring note to end on.
I hope so.
This deep dive has been a wild ride.
It has.
We've explored some truly radical ideas.
We have.
And it's given me a lot to think about.
Good.
I have to say, I'm feeling like a renewed sense of hope.
That's great to hear.
And possibility. Maybe, just maybe, a more conscious and harmonious world is within our reach.
I believe it is.
I like that a lot.
And I encourage all of you listening.
Yeah.
Keep exploring these ideas. Challenge your assumptions. Imagine new possibilities.
Yeah.
Most importantly, take action.
Take action.
However small it may seem,
right.
Every step we take towards a more conscious way of living makes a difference.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
On this journey of exploration.
It's been a pleasure.
And remember, the conversation doesn't end here.
No, it doesn't.
Keep thinking. Keep questioning. Keep striving to make a difference.
Make the world a better place.
Yeah. All right. That's it for this deep dive.
Thanks again.
Thanks for listening.